Amazing, very attractive, might I add, MC will be moderating the next panel. The Music Discovery panel, Casey Newton, senior reporter of The Verge in the moderator role. We've got BandPage's Jay Sider, founder and CEO. Facebook's Ime Archibong, who's the strategic partner manager there. Tom Conrad, the CTO and EVP of product at Pandora. And Alexander Ljung, founder and CEO of SoundCloud. Come on up, guys.
Hi. So I'm really excited. I asked to be able to moderate this panel because I try to listen to music for as much of the day as humanly possible, and I'm thrilled that we have such a great lineup to talk about it. I want to start with the big music news of the week. Tom, Pandora bought a radio station in South Dakota this week, and it's a radio station that brags about the fact that you will not hear rap music on it. So was that important to you guys, or no? Why did Pandora buy a radio station this week?
This is really just the penultimate step in my 10-year plan to become an on-air radio personality.
I knew this about you. I knew this about you the whole time. Listen to the radio voice.
I'm like just a few months away from my own morning show.
Will you play hip hop?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, this is so boring. It really goes back to some super esoteric music licensing stuff. You know, in music, there are two copyrights. There's a copyright that's owned by the songwriter, and there's a copyright that's owned by the record labels. You know, I think any time that you come in as an innovator in an industry, the incumbent players, you know, try to find every mechanism by which they can keep you from succeeding. In this case, we've been in negotiation and in kind of an extended dispute with ASCAP for more than a year. They're seeking to dramatically raise the underlying royalties for songwriters, while at the same time extending very reasonable rates to kind of the incumbents. One of the things that they did is about a year ago, they negotiated a royalty system for anybody that operates a terrestrial radio station as well as an online property. And 16 of the 20 largest internet radio stations take advantage of this license, so it's really all of our competition. The license itself is really simple. It's almost like effectively a click-through. It's 3 pages long. It has a field you fill out for the name of your radio station and a field that you fill out for the name of your website. So we bought a radio station and filled out the form, and we're moving on to more interesting things now.
Right, there you go. Well, if nothing else, it speaks to the enormous complexity of running online music streaming services in this day and age, right? Let's talk about maybe the second biggest piece of radio news this week. Apple this week says iTunes Radio finally going to happen. I'm sure most of you have read the details. My big takeaway from that keynote, though, was that for a company that likes to skate to where the puck is going, this in no way to me felt like where the puck is going in radio and in the way we consume music. What thoughts do you guys have about Apple's big move into this space?
Well, I think I mean, it wasn't unexpected in any way. Like, I think it was a little bit of a letdown for everybody to say that there wasn't something in there that was kind of different. But, I mean...
I'm not sure I was entirely let down.
Okay.
It's good news for Pandora, y'all.
From a user perspective. No, but it's kind of interesting if you extrapolate from just that moment and look at what's happened over the last couple of months. Like, we see more and more larger companies getting into the space and being quite uncreative about how they do it, which, on the one hand it's kind of good for consumer choice, I guess, but like on the other hand, you can kind of ask yourself, like, do we really need that many versions of the same kind of service? At least from our perspective at SoundCloud, it's kind of nice that none of them have gone after the SoundCloud space, so it's kind of nice for us.
How long have you been at it?
With SoundCloud?
Yeah.
About 6+ years, something
I think
like that.
By my math, you have 3 more years till Apple copies you.
Okay, good.
Glimpse
that's
2016.
That's enough time.
It's going to be really, really interesting. Yeah. How about you guys? Ime, Jay?
I think you covered it.
Yeah, and from our angle, I mean, at the end of the day, it's another consumption experience that is available out there to probably millions and millions of users, and It's not necessarily where we, Facebook, want to play, but happy to kind of turn over and see the consumption experience of something else.
Sure. Let's talk about where Facebook wants to play. So, you guys recently unveiled some really different ways of browsing the stream. One of those is a music tab, something that I was really excited about. I can remember 2 years ago, Jay and I were having dinner, and we were talking about the potential of someday being able to see what a friend was listening to on Facebook, and then with one click being able to get that song playing. That's now happening, although increasingly I'm not really seeing that in the music tab itself. Like when the music tab launched, I thought this is going to be a great source of discovery for me, and yet I find that when I click there, it's like kind of Usher's social media team showing me his upcoming television appearances.
Wait a minute, that's not actually Usher?
I don't know, that'd be a big story. No, it really looks like Usher, but like I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel like artists have leaped into my music tab to tell me about new music that they're working on, or say, hey, check out this new song that I just recorded. So I'm really curious to hear from you, Ime, like where you think the music tab is now, and where you hope it is 6 months from now.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I think there's two lenses that I put on how Facebook can help with kind of the social music discovery piece. There's the push model, which Facebook has done fantastic for a number of years. The music feed is another kind of representation or another piece of real estate where we're trying to make that happen and make it happen in a good way. Sure, your experience may not be perfect quite yet, but it's actually gotten better, I would say, from the last 6 months, and hopefully 6 months from now I can say the exact same thing that's continued to get better. For example, I follow people like Starslinger, who's a DJ, and I think actually does a fantastic job of giving me exactly what I want via his post. Maybe it's not a go buy my t-shirt, it's, here's actually a music on SoundCloud that I'm really digging right now, and I'm discovering brand new tracks and music and artists via him. The other model that I think that Facebook is particularly keen on, and we're making headroads into, is kind of the pull model, and I heard people talking about push versus pull a little bit earlier today. But you've seen things like the profile and timeline rollout and the work we've done there to make sure that music has a nice home on people's identity online. It's something that we've been focused heavily on. Graph search is another thing. You got to imagine at some point people will be able to search, friends that are listening to
songs that single girls near me are listening to.
Exactly, right? But be able to discover music that way for that pull model. And then you saw, and I think you mentioned even on stage earlier today, finally elevating and kind of bringing the experience of hashtags. People have been having public discussions about music, about television, about sporting events on Facebook for a long time. So letting people participate in that public discussion are one of the another pull model that we're excited about.
Right, interesting. Might like to come back to hashtags later. Jay, you've built your business on Facebook on helping people discover bands on Facebook. Tell me a little bit about where you think Facebook is, and where does that music tab fit in for you?
So, that's certainly where we started, and then over the last year, we're now, powering sponsored concert listings on Pandora, and many different platforms as well, musicians' websites and stuff. And so, when we think about, how kind of where fans are and how music is social, we're thinking they're all around the internet. One of the biggest issues for musicians is that their fans are on all of these different places. The physical world, where we used to distribute music to record stores and tickets to box offices, they need to distribute that to a town near you. But now that's gone, and now we have these different towns kind of online. And that's the way we see it, where a musician puts in their, photos, videos, bios, shows into BandPage, and then we send it out to these different endpoints. And so Facebook has been, a great spot where there's a billion people that are, interacting there, but there are hundreds of millions of, and billions of people, kind of across the internet that they're interacting with and sharing that information.
Right. All right.
I think it depends a lot on trying to, our job in some ways is trying to figure out, how can music and audio work for the specific mindset that the user is at that point, right? So if I look at a SoundCloud user, they may be, they may go to SoundCloud.com and be super engaged, reposting things, putting their sets together, commenting, being very close to the artist, and then, later in the day they're checking in on their Facebook page and they're seeing more lightweight notifications of what's going on. They still want to listen to it. Maybe they want to dive into their BandPage and see sort of what's going on. But they kind of users have different levels of intent to engage, and there's just kind of different platforms for that. And I think part of what all of us need to do is just make sure that that they can have the depth that they want at the right point, no matter what URL they're on as well.
That's interesting. Well, and you guys certainly have done an amazing job of just sort of building out this audio infrastructure throughout the web, right? Like I saw SoundCloud embedded on web pages long before I ever visited SoundCloud.com.
Yeah.
But it also feels like you guys are trying to morph into a destination on your own right. Like how big of a priority is it to you that I'm visiting SoundCloud.com all the time?
I mean, I think like it's an interesting question because we've never thought so much about this idea of being distributed versus being a destination. Like I think both of them, again, it's the same thing. It depends on where the user is at and what they want to do. I mean, if you look at our whole network, like we'll reach over 200 million people every single month. And some of them want to go deeper, and some of them just want a more lightweight touch. Some of them want both. And I really think of it as like, every one of our products, no matter if it's a widget, a deeper integration into a different platform, our own native apps, they all should give a SoundCloud experience, but on different levels, depending on sort of what the context for the user is.
Right. All right. Cool. Well, let's take a step back. This is the social discovery conference, and in some of our preliminary talks, I feel like we haven't really come to any agreement about what social means when it comes to music, right? Like I'm sure this is something you guys think about a lot. What are we talking about when we say that music is social?
Okay. It is. Now, so I've actually, I'm not sure where this goes, but like recently I've been thinking much more about not what features online are social and how that connects to music, like, commenting on something, is that social? I've been thinking a lot more about, how music and audio have like throughout history always been this fundamental piece of how we're creating culture and how we're social with each other and how that fits in with people. And the thing that I think is interesting there is really like what we're starting to see much more on the web in general, and which we've noticed much more on SoundCloud recently, is that creating music has become more of a conversation in a way. It's not just like, complete silence, then an album launch, and then complete silence. It's much more conversational. And the really powerful thing about that is that it's easier for music to tie directly in with the creation of current culture. And it sounds a bit abstract, but an example would be, Jay-Z going to Cuba, coming back, and everybody freaking out that he was in Cuba. So what does he do? He writes a song, Open Letter, about it, publishes it the same day, and boom, it blows up everywhere. And then like President Obama is commenting on that. That's like how music fits in with culture. And that's a key piece of how it's social. So, I don't know how that translates into a specific feature that we will launch at some point maybe, but that's sort of at least what I've been thinking a lot more about recently, how that's sort of modeled on the web, and less about, how people follow things or how they comment on things.
Yeah.
I think at Pandora, our ambition has always been to build music solutions for hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. I mean, part of the reason that we are radio is because as we looked at the landscape 9 years ago, it's the only part of the music universe in the United States that has hundreds of millions of participants. There aren't hundreds of millions of people that buy music. There aren't hundreds of millions of people that go to concerts and so forth. And so we really thought, the way we can move the needle in with respect to people being entertained by music was to kind of embrace the good parts of this radio model. And so I think it's really easy as entrepreneurs to fall into that age-old trap of thinking that you're like the mainstream audience. I mean, I love music. I love discovering music. I love talking about music. I mean, there's nothing I like better than like trapping you in front of a stereo and saying, oh, you've got to hear this song. I love like meeting that guy at the record store who knows everything about the new releases and knows about my taste and can recommend things to me that are like kind of push the boundaries. But like I'm a freak. Like there's no, like that is a tiny little niche. And when I look at the things that we do in music that are social, I think that a lot of them come from that place. We build features about sharing because like we're these weird lean-in music fans that love to share or love to be the recipient of those moments. But on the one hand, like I think everybody intuitively agrees that music is social. That doesn't seem controversial. But then when you start to really dig into what does that mean, actually the thing that I just described about like sharing music, that's not a very mainstream thing. I mean, you step outside of this our little immediate circle, and it just doesn't look like what the rest of America, let alone the world, spends a lot of time doing. So we're starting to think about, well, why is music social? Why do we all agree that music is social? Some of it is about it's a big part of popular culture, and so that makes us feel connected. And some of it is about we come together around music listening just constantly, right? I mean, you're in your home, you're with your family, there's music on. You're in your dorm room, there's music on. With your friends, you're at a party, there's music on. You're in a bar, there's music on. You're at the coffee shop, there's music on. You're in the car with your family, there's music on. And that is a social experience of listening to music and consuming it together. And so I'm thinking more and more and more about as Pandora becomes the predominant source of music in lots of these environments, and we all have these devices in our pocket that can interact with those streams in a collaborative way, how can we embrace what feels to me like the really mainstream social thing of music, which is we enjoy it together?
Right.
Yeah, for us, I mean, it's all about connecting, right? So our mission is connect the world, make it more open, more social, and honing in on exactly what you said is having those conversations around music really forge connections. So 2 examples or 2 quick stories. This past weekend, I'm at a wedding up in Napa, sitting at a table, don't know anyone in the wedding except for my date and maybe the bride. And sitting with 4 or 5 other people, we literally had 2-hour conversation on what is going to make or break this dance floor right now? What are the wedding jams that they need to play in order to get everyone who we were looking around the room, who we were skeptical about them dancing? What's going to make the first wave of
It's not a 2-hour conversation. That's like a 1-minute conversation. It's easy. Kesha.
we took it from Michael Jackson to Prince to Motown. We talked about the set that had to get before you left with the younger folks on the dance floor. But those were folks that I didn't know at all. We spent 2 hours of passionate, fun conversation. It was primarily focused around music. I learned about their love for music. They learned about my love for music, our shared love for music. It was fantastic. This morning I wake up, same thing. Friend on Facebook named Alexa posts, hey, preparing for a wedding this weekend, need to understand what people have on heavy rotation right now in their CD players or their streaming services or on Pandora, whatever it is. I mean, talking 50 comments of just folks being like, this is what I'm listening to, this is what I'm listening to, likes, re-comments, and before you knew, you had a conversation that was happening in my feed this morning as I was literally walking over here saying, this is awesome, this is what social is about, this is what music is about.
I think that's what, Tom, you're talking about, which is, there are a bunch of these kind of super fans that are just always in and discovering music. When you hear music discovery, you think of your friend. Everybody in the room has 3 friends that they go to for music. But, what we really look at is empowering those, your 3 friends to get the music that they're listening to, much easier out to the rest of the people. And I think that's, looking at the tools or the efficiencies that we can create through technology to get that information to you. It's the same thing about shows. When you think about going to a concert, you're not going by yourself. You're going with most people don't go by themselves. Most people go with a couple of their friends. And so showing them when they're looking at a particular show, we show them all their other friends that have RSVP'd to that particular event. It doesn't really matter where on the internet they've RSVP'd. We're able to kind of collect that information, show them a little profile picture of their friends that either RSVP to that event or like that band, so you can share that information with them. And it's just something, a piece of content that we really love to share with each other.
Right. So it sounds like music is social to the extent that it's something that we all love to talk about.
Yeah, I think we all do, and maybe slightly different from your point. I mean, I think that there's been way too much focus on us music freaks, basically, of how we want to overshare and overcurate and spend obsessive amount of time on it. But I do think that it's the same thing that drives that exists in every person, but just on a slightly different level. I mean, it's people in my family who know nothing about music and spend no time on it. They get really excited when it's there's a song that they like and they share it with somebody. They're not as sort of vested in it, and they probably need slightly different tools for it. But I think that at the core, that's kind of human desire of wanting to do that is there with everybody. But we maybe haven't figured out the right tools for everybody to do that yet.
Let's talk about the other big piece, which is discovery. I feel like Pandora actually probably does not get enough credit for the discovery that you guys do. I mean, it's been, the better part of a decade that I've had real normal people, not tech people, not the social media ninjas out in the audience who have said to me, I heard the greatest track on Pandora, I found this band for Pandora. So I mean, this has been something you guys have been doing forever. SoundCloud, you're a newer entrant onto the scene, but I'm now hearing, again, all the time from normals, like, oh, it's an amazing track on SoundCloud. How do you guys are having a lot of success with discovery. How do you both approach it? And how do you differ, do you think?
I think, the one thing which, even in the past, when, before we had sort of decent tools for it, part of it has always happened on SoundCloud. And the power of when it happens there is usually that it comes through another person. So I'm a big believer in that, somebody can recommend a song to me and I'll have a very different response to it. Based on, if it just pops up for me versus if it's somebody who comes and says, hey, check this out, because I heard this yesterday when I met this friend on the street and blah, 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 like that there's some kind of story around it. And I think that's worked really well on SoundCloud. As we've sort of, as we started getting to the point where it was like, holy shit, there's more than 10 hours of sounds uploaded every single minute. There's no way of making sense of all of this stuff. We had to, start creating more features for people to be able to humanly make sense of it through reposting and sets and stuff like that. And, that's been, even just like for me, it's been an amazing way of like discovering new stuff. I mean, I always knew that, I remember this day when we sort of passed the point where it was like, oh my God, there's more stuff on SoundCloud than I can listen to in my entire life. Like I will never be able to hear it all, which was a long time ago. But all of a sudden then it was like, you start finding all of these really amazing things, like really unique stuff, which, and for me, and I know for others, like if you can get some of those unique things with very little friction, it's a magical experience.
Right. But one of the ways it seems like Pandora is different to me is that algorithms are driving a lot of it, and yet it's an algorithm I actually trust. Like most of the time when people tell me the more you use this, the smarter it gets, I feel like they're lying to me. But like Pandora, it actually works.
Yeah, so, I mean, the place we always start from is our goal is to entertain and delight people with music. I mean, there are a lot of people that get beyond high school and college and start to lose their connection to music because they don't have the time to spend on curating and making playlists and listening to all the new things that are coming out and even engaging with friends about what are you listening to. It just becomes harder and harder and harder. And so first and foremost, we want to make sure that we delight and entertain people, and we think the best way to do that is to personalize the experience to each individual person. And my favorite story about Pandora in 9 years is we had this town hall meeting somewhere in the Midwest, and this 75, 80-year-old man came, and there were a few hundred people in the audience, and at the end of the presentation and Q&A, he raised his hand and he said, when I came in here, I was blown away that there were this many people in my hometown that love marching band music. Because his entire conception of Pandora was that it played marching band music and nothing but marching band music. Like that's the goal. The goal is like to treat you with like the utmost respect. What is the music that you love, and then to personalize it to your taste. And discovery is an important piece of that. But it's not the only dimension that matters. And so from the Music Genome Project to all of the algorithms that we apply on top of that to the team of programmers and curators that are adding to that whole algorithmic system, I mean, it really takes kind of a constellation of techniques. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that Pandora is like just the Music Genome Project, and there are a lot of people who want to kind of maybe then kind of put us in the, it's just an algorithm bucket. But there's really a bunch of pieces that we bring together. The audience and the tens of billions of thumbs is a big part of it. The Music Genome is important. This team of curators and programmers we have that do jobs that are a lot like traditional radio stations are a big part of it. We don't really care about the method. What we care about is just like exactly the right formula for you. Like when you want to sing along, we want to play something you know, and you're like ready for that discovery moment, which is a totally joyful thing when you get it right. Like we want to like hit you with that.
Right, and one thing I have noticed though, no matter what station you're playing on Pandora, it always plays Ellie Goulding Lights. So I don't know how that happened. It's true.
The best thing about this is
hardwired by Tom.
So the best thing about this, is every single person tells me that, and it's always a different song.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
interesting.
I mean, here's what that means. That means that she is like right smack dab in the middle of your musical
She's right
universe.
in the center.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right, we're already done. This was amazing. Thank you. I would talk to you for another half an hour, but you have to get off the stage. Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.